different perspective.
Hello and welcome. I'm Ellie Richardson and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. We are starting this hour with some breaking news. A powerful blizzard has struck the US northeast, dropping more than 2.5 feet of snow, bringing travel to a near standstill. Roads are closed, train services halted, and over 7,000 flights have been cancelled. More than 600,000 homes and businesses are without power. Authorities, including New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, have urged residents to stay indoors as emergency crews clear streets. Schools are shut, Broadway theatres closed, and the UN complex in Manhattan is also closed. Strong winds have created high snowdrifts, while the National Guard has been deployed to assist in the worst hit areas. The storm has prompted states of emergency across 7 states, and FEMA continues to provide critical support despite funding lapses. And for some more breaking news, members of the US men's ice hockey team returned home on Monday after their historic Olympic gold medal win. The team was greeted by cheering fans at Miami International Airport. The United States defeated Canada 2-1 in an overtime thriller, ending a 50-year wait for Olympic gold in men's ice hockey. Captain Austin Matthews said that the team is still processing the victory, while Matthew Knock celebrated the moment, noting their achievement in changing the history of US hockey. Jack Hughes scored the game-winning goal, securing the team's first gold since 1980. Let's listen in to what US ice hockey players had to say.
Now that we're back on U.S. soil and just the reaction we're getting from everybody, I mean, we just did something that only 30-plus Americans have done in 100 years, and kind of changed history of hockey in the United States. And we should be very honored, very happy, and we should be allowed to celebrate this because it's quite an accomplishment.
Honestly, the gold medal, it's so important for us because we worked so hard to get to that point, and it's for us, but the best part is it's for, like I was saying this, the day of the gold medal, it's for all the guys that have come before us and, all the young kids that are...
And now for your top stories this hour. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico has announced that Slovakia will halt emergency electricity supplies to Ukraine if oil flows via the Druzhba pipeline are not restored. This move comes after Ukrainian officials blamed a Russian drone strike for damage to pipeline equipment, halting oil shipments to Slovakia and Hungary since January. Fico said the measure would remain in place until the oil flow resumes, adding that any future Ukrainian requests for energy aid would be denied. This marks a significant escalation in the ongoing dispute between Ukraine and its neighbours, with Slovakia hinting at further actions if Ukraine does not address the issue. Hungary and Slovakia provide a significant portion of Ukraine's energy imports, putting additional pressure on Kyiv. Let's listen in to what Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico had to say.
Pred prijatím dnešného prvého recipročného opatrenia proti Ukrajine pre nepriateľské akty prezidenta Zelenského som mal záujem telefonicky s prezidentom Ukrajiny hovoriť a získať odpoveď, kedy a či vôbec budú obnovené dodávky ropy na Slovensko. Obdržali sme správu, že ukrajinský prezident je pripravený na rozhovor až po 25. februári tohto roku. Vzhľadom na závažnosť situácie a vyhlásený stav ropnej núdze na Slovensku sme za týchto okolností nútení pristúpiť k prvému recipročnému opatreniu okamžite. Bude zrušené i hneď po obnovení tranzitu ropy na...
We are now being joined by Dr. Sanjay Kumar, who's a journalist, the Korea Herald Seoul in South Korea. Thank you for joining us here today on NewsX World. Thank you. How might Slovakia's move to cut emergency power, an essential lifeline in winter, especially as Russia keep attacking energy infrastructure and residential homes. How might this affect Ukraine's energy stability and also civilian infrastructure during the ongoing war? And how might the people of Ukraine especially feel?
It is going to make the situation more vulnerable. You know, for Europe already there is an energy crisis, but many European countries were trying to come up with some strategies and plans in last few years, especially after this war broke out, and they were trying to minimize the energy dependence on Russia. But unfortunately, some small countries in Europe, they had no leverage of such strategy to minimize those energy dependence. Slovakia is one of them. So what Bratislava is trying to do is not to offend Russia, and they don't want to offend Russia in a way that may affect their dependency on Russian crude. So if you see it from this perspective, that would be much easier. But yeah, as you correctly mentioned, that it is going to make people in Ukraine severely affected. Although Ukraine have said that they will not be affected uh, on a huge basis. I mean, it is not going to affect them very comprehensively, but only a marginal basis. But the fact is that the entire European Union has to come up with some plan on this, because it is having long-term effect. Because if we see the dependency of Slovakia and Hungary, who are sharing some things, this raises great concerns, because these technical transits are becoming a weapon of this geopolitical pressure. So this should not be repeated in future, and that is why I think this entire European Union leaders have to come up with some sort of solution. And rather than only listening to Ukrainian authorities, they have to think of the long-term consequences that it can bring. In one word, if we can say that, like, if elephants fight, like when elephants fight, it is the grass who pays the price, who suffers. So these small countries are going to suffer. But in these circumstances, how long-term strategy can be made, it is high time to discuss.
And to what extent does this dispute reflect broader tensions within the EU over how to balance support for Ukraine with national energy security concern, especially with now Slovakia and Hungary threatening to cut off these supplies?
Yes, you are very right in your perspective, and not just Hungary and Slovakia, but there are some undercurrents within some Eastern European countries as well, and even a very assertive Poland also had not been coming out in huge support. I mean, say, like, they were not being very vocal. Like many countries in Europe were not vocal when it comes to inclusion of Ukraine in EU stance. So their stance had not been clear. Although EU has their own stance, but there is a like kind of passivity when it comes to inclusion in the European Union. I have talked to many diplomats. Even they sometimes say that the matter is not just legal, or matter is not just about dealing with Russia, but also it has to do with European values. So there are some passive negativity also within the EU and within the smaller countries of Europe. So to fight with Russia in long run, first the entire EU has to be united, and this unity can only be achieved if these leaders collectively talk, which is not visible, unfortunately, these days. That is why this Slovakian PM comment is also coming, and I'm sure that many conservative blocs in many countries of small countries in Europe, I mean small players, they are going to galvanize public support on the basis of this economic insecurity. So that is why, in order to deal with Russia in long run, which is a kind of permanent problem for the entire Europe, and be it from the perspective of energy dependency or economic security or long-term effects of security. This entire EU countries have to come up with a unified and uniform voice, which is not happening, unfortunately, in the last few months.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjay, but please don't go too far as we will be joining back with you very shortly. Mexican drug lord Nemesio Osegura, who's known as El Mencho, was killed during a military raid in the western state of Jalisco. The operation, led by Mexican federal forces following a tip about his romantic ties, and resulted in the deaths of at least 62 people, including 25 members of the National Guard and 34 suspected cartel members. The raid prompted cartel retaliation, with roadblocks and violence spreading across Mexico. The US provided intelligence, but no US forces participated in the operation, Mexican authorities confirmed. While President Claudia Sheinbaum hailed the operation as a victory against the Jalisco New Generation cartel, the violence could escalate as cartel leaders react. The death of El Mencho is a blow to Sijing, but the country faces growing concerns about cartel violence. President Sheinbaum stated that the situation in Jalisco is being controlled and security forces have been deployed to calm unrest. Meanwhile, tourism in Mexico, particularly in coastal towns like Puerto Vallarta, has been severely impacted, with flight cancellations and protests reported. US President Donald Trump has called for Mexico to intensify its efforts against cartels. Let's listen in.
Todas las operaciones se realizan por las fuerzas federales. No hay participación en la operación de fuerzas de Estados Unidos. Lo que hay es mucho intercambio de información. Como lo hemos dicho aquí varias veces, el entendimiento con Estados Unidos se basa fundamentalmente en intercambio de inteligencia de información. En este caso, hubo información que prestó el gobierno de los Estados Unidos, incluso ellos sacaron un comunicado de inteligencia, pero toda la operación desde su planeación es responsabilidad pues, de las fuerzas federales, en este caso de la Secretaría de la Defensa.
We are now being joined by Leonardo Javier Chuves, who is a PhD student joining us from Mexico. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. Thank you. How have you and your family and friends been affected by the events yesterday? Did you witness any damage, blockades or violence by the El Mencho supporters? And has these events changed your perception on safety and security in the city?
Well, thanks for having me. And firstly, fortunately, no close family or friends were directly affected. All we got to know that was happening in the city was because of social media, of videos that friends and family were spreading and sending us. But yeah, I was a witness of how this damage of these blocks that Narcos did. When I tried to return home, in a 15-20 minute ride home, we were able to see at least 4 burned cars and buses, and also some small grocery stores. And well, my perception about the security right now is that everything just came down. Like, we already knew that cartel was in some control of the city, but with this happening, everything exploded and it went really bad. And we don't know how it will be these days, the security. So we are all locked down right now. So that's all that we know.
And where were you when you heard the news of El Mencho's death? Do you remember your reaction to the news? What kind of influence did he have before his death?
Well, when I got the news, I was with my father, having some breakfast, and also with another friends. We were in the other point of the city, from where I live, and the only thing I could think of is that we weren't going to return home at least soon, because we were staying in the place. We knew that this was only the beginning, and we didn't have any certainty of how we will return home or when. Thankfully, everything stopped or went calm in 5-6 hours, and we started to hear that some people were returning to their homes. So we took the risk and returned home safely. And well, the influence that he had over the Guadalajara, Zapopan, and Jalisco, and Mexico is that he was well known. Also, the cartel. Everybody is afraid of the cartel, obviously. And with his death, we didn't knew what was about to happen. So everybody was afraid to go out to do anything. So everybody stayed at home, and if they were out, they stayed there until they could find a way home.
And Guadalajara is the host for the 2026 FIFA World Cup this year, starting in June. Do you believe it will still go ahead after these events?
I don't know. I hope we are still a host, but we don't know a lot of things that are happening out there, because we have spent the whole day here, so there's no people outside like getting to see what is happening. So we have no information, and I just hope all this ends soon and everything can go as usual and we can host the World Cup this year.
Yeah. And how is the feeling now in the city? I know you just mentioned that you're staying home, but can people go to work or school or leave their house, or is it strictly forbidden that everyone needs to stay in?
Well, they activated a red code, at least in Jalisco, and this meant that at least school, young kids were not going to school until Wednesday or until new advice. And for work, they are managing, but the orders are home office, the ones that can do home office, and they are still working out that part. But yeah, no one wants to go out because we don't want to know what's happening out there, because we have no information, and also we are not risking anything. Obviously, there are some parts in the city that are safer than others, but we don't know. So everybody is on their home, even if the business tells you that you have to go to work, nobody's going out. And also schools, nobody's going to school, to work, or anything.
Thank you so much, Leonardo, for joining us here on NewsX World and giving us your insights. Thank you. According to reports, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has said that the country will strengthen and improve its economic over time for the next 5 years. Speaking at the ongoing 9th Party Congress, he called the period a full-scale progress phase and urged reforms in thought, technology and culture to ensure new projects are well managed. Reports indicate that Chinese President Xi Jinping sent congratulations on Kim's re-election as party's general secretary. Meanwhile, Kim's sister, Kim Yoo-jong, was promoted to party's department director. We are now being joined by Dr. Sanjay Kumar. Again, thank you for rejoining us back here on NewsX World. Thank you. What economic strategies might North Korea have to pursue to solidify and develop, like they said, its economy over the next 5 years? And how realistic are these goals given ongoing sanctions and isolation?
Ali, although it is the ninth Congress, but I personally think that it is a kind of defensive pragmatism that Kim Jong Un is trying to put it out. But in reality, this doesn't look working because it's a liberal market order in the entire world. So when you talk about when you try to centralize the entire system, which is indeed centralized in case of North Korea. So they are trying to like once again like reiterate and through this Congress that they are going to come up with a consolidated economic plan, which is already in the ninth phase. I mean, ninth economic year plan means ninth phase, but how it is doable when when the markets are not in designed in that way in the liberal market world. If you see sufficiency is one thing, all these under this Juche ideology that they try to maintain there and they try to be resilient. This does not looks working because you have to interconnect many markets, and unfortunately even if you see the Chinese interconnectivity, they have not been leveraged so far. If you see the North Korean products in China, it's very limited. It is not on a large basis. And being a neighbor of North Korea, I mean like-minded neighbor, you don't see North Korean products or North Korea made in North Korea things popularly being sold in China. So where are those markets? If you see another like-minded country, then it's Russia. But I don't know how they are going to manage with them when it comes to market strategy thing. So it is a defensive pragmatism where regime is more important, political messaging is more important than acting upon the lens of economic security. So I see in that way. It's a defensive pragmatism.
And what domestic challenges such as infrastructure, food security and labour productivity could undermine their 5-year economic plan?
Although their situation is vulnerable, it is well known, without engaging international markets to them, it looks very impossible, or I should say like closely impossible to thrive. If you see the domestic situations, the agricultural resources and the human resource utilization or the tech resource utilization, on all these fronts, North Korea has somehow failed to utilize this, and it is because the central planning aspect and over dependency on the political messaging and all these things. Although this time Kim Jong Un is trying to change the optics, and he's trying to give a different kinds of message where it should be reestablished or like established that look, we are changing and we are becoming enough self-reliant. But because of this underutilization in North Korea, there the chances are very slim that there would be any resilience.
And how might this development phase impact inter-Korean relations and diplomacy, especially if they prioritise internal economic progress over talks with Seoul or Washington?
See, if prioritizing is another thing and execution is another thing. If North Korea is seriously is interested in executing the plans that they have mentioned to achieve this economic development, they need outside parties, and they need who can be the best. I mean, who can be better than South Korea? So there is a need to engage South Korea on this front. But unfortunately, if you see the entire political messaging, I would say there is no mention of South Korea, and not even mention of the US. So, first ideally they should engage with South Korea, and South Korea is a bridge to US and different markets, and many problems can be resolved. But they see South Korea as a security threat, and also as an enemy they have declared. So if you see these things, then any any neutral person would be passive and would be not positive about North Korea. So that these are the regions that increases the vulnerability in the north. So I see it as a political messaging, and just a change in optics, because they are trying to um, send a message that look, we are trying something on the ground as well to achieve economic development. But economic development has become a very interconnected terminology in this global world. Without engaging liberal economies, without engaging different economies, without changing your perception, you cannot achieve economic development, and that has to be taken care of when it comes to the regime or the administration in North Korea.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjay. We currently are coming at you with some more breaking news. North Korea's Kim Yo-jong has been promoted to full department director in the Workers' Party, state media report. The move comes as her brother, Kim Jong-un, was re-elected as party secretary general, extending his 15-year rule and solidifying his power. The party congress sets the country's economic agenda for the next 5 years, promising a full-scale progress phase to revolutionize thought, technology and culture. Kim Yo-jong is expected to lead propaganda and inter-Korean relations, while attention also focuses on Kim Jong-un's teenage daughter, Kim Joo-ae, who is emerging as his heir apparent. Thousands of party elites packed Pyongyang for the once in 5 years summit, highlighting North Korea's continued focus on diplomacy, military and economic strategy. North Korea's Kim Yo-jong has been promoted to full department director in the Workers' Party, state media reports. The move comes as her brother Kim Jong-un was re-elected as party secretary general, extending his 15-year rule and solidifying his power. The party congress sets the country's economic agenda for the next 5 years, promising a full-scale progress phase. To revolutionize thought, technology and culture, Kim Yo-jong is expected to lead propaganda and inter-Korean relations, while attention also focuses on Kim Jong-un's teenage daughter, Kim Joo-ae, who is emerging as his heir. We're now being rejoined by Dr. Sanjay Kumar. Thank you for joining us back here for this breaking news story. What could this mean for North Korea as Kim Jong-un promotes his sister as department head?
See, it's a political exercise that they had been doing since many years. If you see the last 6-7 years, the political optics of the North Korean regime had been revolving around uh, his sister, I mean Kim Jong Un's sister and his daughter. So these political messaging is done deliberately with with an objective. And if you see how authoritarian regimes work, they have this agenda, they have this kind of a strategy in the background, and they follow these agendas and strategies in the form of optics. You can see any other countries, or you can relate it with other authoritarian regimes as well. But North Korea has its own style of doing, and this is also one of them. But it's very identical. So we should not take it as a surprise, because there is it is not a democracy where the optics would always change, or um, optics won't matter a lot. That is why we should not take it as a surprise.
And how does Kim Yo-jong's promotion impact power dynamics within North Korea's leadership?
See, that is very critical right now because she looks very aggressive. Sometimes, she's being seen even more aggressive than Kim Jong Un and the former leaderships because the way she tries to do the political messaging, it is very direct and sometimes very blunt, and you can say heavy loaded comments where she tries to say that any any sort of confrontation would be not just replied back, but replied back through uh, more heavy prices. I mean, words such as playing with fire kind of things. So this intensity that her words have is definitely is going to affect the power dynamics here because when you have such person as leadership, not the highest, but in among the higher leadership, you are likely to see many such escalating comments uh, that may affect the security and power dynamics in the Northeast Asia, and that is why it is critical. But from South, I mean, from Republic of Korea's perspective, here the leadership and the entire government here looks very determined to engage North Korea and talk North Korea through dialogue and not reply with the same intensity that they try to. So for South Korea, I'm sure it is going to be a kind of stable thing, but we never know how other countries in the region are going to react on this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sanjay Kumar, for also coming back here for this breaking news. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.